Tom, I wanted to start with something. I wasn't planning to go there today, but we were talking earlier with Jim Meny about this whole Roxham Road issue. Letter now from Francois Legault to Justin Trudeau, suggesting he have a discussion with Joe Biden when he gets here, coming up next month, about Roxham Road. How long are we going to keep talking about this? And what is the ultimate idea here? If you could change this situation tomorrow, what would it be?
Change the Safe Third Country Agreement. Mm-hmm. So that's the agreement between Canada and the United States that says we are presumed on both sides of the border to be respecting international law. Somebody shows up at the Lacal border crossing, the regular border crossing that we've all taken to go to the States. They say, I'd like to have recognition of my refugee status. I need asylum in Canada. The Canadian border guards will say, you stay in the United States. They recognize the same international laws as we do. And the first place of the two that you arrive, you have to stay there. So what happened is people started coming through a different area, Roxham Road. It could have been one of a dozen places where you could have crossed on foot. And Roxham Road has grown into something that is as big and structured, and there's so many buildings, it's almost like a real border crossing today. But since it's not, you're allowed in. There's a system where you're given bus tickets by the mayor of New York. City Hall gives you a bus ticket to Plattsburgh. At Plattsburgh, we have learned off-duty American border guards are moonlighting to drive people from Plattsburgh to Roxham Road. There are even taxis and cars that I've seen that have Roxham Road, express sort of thing written on them, taking people there. And then you get off with all your luggage, everything that you can carry, your spouse, your kids, and you carry everything over the border, and you make a declaration that you're seeking asylum in Canada, and you're going to be treated. It's going to be a long time. This is what we learned today, that most of these people, and there were 40,000 last year, most of them would love to be able to work, but as usual, our immigration department is completely tied up. People are now, today, being given appointments to determine whether they can get a work permit. And that appointment is for 2025. That's your government at work. So Legault has a very bad track record on these things during the campaign. He said awful things about immigrants. His then immigration minister, Jean Boulet, said really horrible, racist things, in my view. And so they start off with two strikes against them. But when Legault looks at this and says, we've got a housing crisis here, we've got a housing shortage on our own, we've taken in tens of thousands of people, we are welcoming and have been historically welcoming and taking in refugees from all parts of the world, but we're saturated right now. We need the government at the federal level to move in and help share this burden with other provinces so that it won't be so unfair here. So while Quebec does have a good point, because they've got such a lousy track record, it's easy to tut-tut and to wag your fingers at them. But in fact, they do have a point.
So when we talk about closing Roxham Road, you've explained to us before that it's you can't just do it one day to the next, and yet we were able, but we did
utterly pointless.
Okay, we did it during the pandemic.
If you close Roxham Road, they can move to the next road 2 kilometers away and just start doing the same thing.
It'll happen somewhere else.
So you have to get to a point where you intercept someone there and say, sorry, the United States is a safe country, and you stay there whether you come at Roxham Road or at a regular border crossing. And the only way to do that is to get rid of the Safe Third Country Agreement. Mm-hmm. There's one interesting detail here that's worth repeating. Several weeks ago, Marco Mendicino, has had many problems running his government department, many problems. But one of the problems he had was a few weeks ago, he said, it looks like I've got a deal with the Americans to change the Safe Third Country Agreement. And Justin Trudeau, who's very respectful of his ministers and his caucus generally, just moved right in and upbraided this guy publicly and said, no, there's no such thing, and don't say that because it's not true. Now, is it because Trudeau knew that there would be ultimately a meeting with Biden and he's hoping to be able to make that announcement? That's entirely possible.
While we're talking about Biden, can we just briefly touch on his surprise visit to Ukraine and the significance of that? Yeah.
Absolutely extraordinary. One sentence stuck with me and actually concerns me. It's that type of line that you're supposed to retain when you're looking at a long day of meetings and visits, and a lot was said, but it was they're going to stand shoulder to shoulder with Ukraine for, quote, as long as it takes. Now, that's reassuring because this is an absolutely barbaric and illegal invasion of another country by Russia. At the same time, you don't want to get into one of these proxy wars that goes on forever and ever, and the Americans and the Russians fighting each other until the last Ukrainian. So I do think that there also has to be a time when cooler and more experienced heads are given the opportunity to start talking through different channels and different countries, which is the way the peace process ultimately began in Paris to resolve the situation in Vietnam. So we've got to start talking about that, because right now we know that China is supplying arms and will start doing so massively. And we also know that North Korea, one of the most unstable regimes in the world, has said that the whole Pacific is now its firing range. And of course, Iran, always up to no good. So we've got several very belligerent countries out there really stirring up the pot internationally, and I don't think we're paying enough attention to it.
You know, I'll tell you what has struck me just as an observer, and we see this on the news virtually every day, what's going on in Ukraine, that things are not getting any better. It's now been a year, and I think to myself, every time there's another announcement of either more sanctions or other kinds of, weapons being sent, whatever, I think to myself, isn't this incredible to watch play out in front of us? People are dying every single day in the thousands in Ukraine, and Russians, of course, as well, who were sent over to fight. And we're going like day to day or week to week to say, oh, you know what? We're going to send a few more of these and a few more of those, and we don't want to upset the Russians, so we'll wait another week and then we'll send some more missiles. Instead of just saying, and I realize it can't be done, Tom, but it just, when you watch this, the thing I think is, why didn't we try to stop this as soon as we can? The Russians were building up troops on that border long before they invaded. And the world just sat by and watched, knowing that something would happen. And now we're just sitting there going, well, we'll give them a few more tanks. Maybe we'll give them some fighter jets later, but not yet, because we don't want to offend Russia. It's amazing to watch this thing play out in real time and consider real people are dying.
And one of the events that was held today with Biden and Zelensky was in front of a wall with pictures of the military personnel that have been killed. And it's thousands upon thousands upon thousands who have been killed. On the Russian side, estimates now in the 100,000 range of killed and injured. So they're paying a very heavy price for the madness of King Putin. And at some point, maybe there'll be a strong enough reaction within Russia, because it's really starting to grate on the average Russian. The average Ukrainian soldier going to the front knows it's a life and death struggle for the survival of his country. So everything is being put into that fight. The Russians, the young Russian who's just been conscripted and pressed into this fight, is saying, why am I doing this? And the answer is, you're just doing it, otherwise we're going to shoot you, which is a long tradition. So this is the way things are right now.
Anyway, I just, again, it's been a year, and we asked, we had Ina Sosun, who's a parliamentarian from Ukraine, earlier on, and said, could you ever have expected that we would be talking about this? We talked to her a couple of months into this, and here we are a year later. And it's one of those things where the world just watches.
Aaron and
that it would be over, sure.
The Russians were convinced this would take a maximum 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. They actually, when a lot of them were overrun and they had to abandon everything they had brought with them, the Ukrainians discovered that a lot of the Russians had been told to bring their dress uniforms so they could look smart as they marched victoriously down the streets of Kyiv after a couple of weeks. Didn't quite work out that way.
No. Tom, let me talk about one other thing we discussed earlier with a guest today, this Chinese spy story as far as Canadians are concerned. It seemed to me this would be an appropriate piece of music to play to lead into that, Brian.
Okay.
There you go. That's, of course, the theme from Get Smart.
Yes.
And I thought, Tom, first of all, why are the Chinese so interested in Canadians? What are there, 11 politicians now named, 9 liberals, 2 conservatives who've actually been spied on? What's going on here?
Well, it's classic behavior, and the Chinese government is not shy about it, and that's why everybody applauded when Trudeau upbraided President Xi when they had that meeting not that long ago. And then Trudeau got screamed at by Xi the next day, saying, when you have this sort of discussion, you don't talk about it, which was a lovely way of confirming that Trudeau had indeed said that, and he wasn't trying to deny the facts. Well, after that, they came up with different lines for him, and they tried to start denying it. But once you've admitted something, it's usually difficult to start denying it. So right now, the Chinese, of course, we learned about the secret police stations in cities like Vancouver and Toronto. They're playing very active roles with the diaspora, with the communities here, getting people, to do their bidding. And it's a very serious concern. Diasporas are very tricky things. You just want everybody to be a Canadian and to sing Kumbaya and to feel happy. But sometimes you have you have very active players. That's one of the reasons why the Iranians have never been allowed to reopen an embassy in Canada, by the way. And I think that at some point, real questions have to be asked about the size of the contingent of the Chinese Communist Party's presence here in Canada.
And what gets done about this? Because this is pretty dangerous ground to be treading on if you're the prime minister, right? China's a big trading partner there. It seems to me we're entering a sort of a different era of relationships with that country and have to be very careful what we do and what we say.
It's fragile.
Well, I think that we've been so careful over the years. It's about time we started standing up and started saying, well, you're not going to mess around with our country, which is exactly what Trudeau seemed to be on. And I think that's why a lot of people thought it was refreshing to see him react the way he did. But when he got back to Canada and he got into question period and he was asked specifically, okay, what have they been doing? What's happened? He refused to answer and just kept skating around the questions, as he's very good at doing. And then all of a sudden, to prove that it had actually taken place, because they must have felt that they were being put in the spotlight, in an unfair manner, people have started leaking documents from CSIS. Now, I'm sorry, this is our national security agency, and they're not supposed to be leaking documents, even to get out of a frustrating situation where a politician is basically hinting that they haven't been doing their job. So we're in a really uncomfortable position right now. These are uncharted waters for any Canadians. Having people leak, as a political situation gets tough, that happens. CSIS leaking documents? That doesn't happen. And so, when this stuff winds up on the front page of the Globe and Mail, Bob Fife and others doing an amazing job of getting this stuff out there, that there's some serious back-channel problems within the government right now.
All right.
On a quick personal note, it was nice to see your face from afar at the funeral for Andrew Carter's mother.
Oh, yeah, and it was what a touching farewell to an amazing woman, and everybody talked about it so beautifully.
A lot of love in that room.
Yes, you bet, and packed.
Packed indeed. Tom, thank you so much.